The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of New Seoul as Dr. Han-Woo Kim picked his way through the twisted metal and broken concrete. His boots crunched on glass and debris that had been there for 50 years, untouched since the day. The Great Invasion ended. Air still tasted of old smoke, and something else he could never quite identify. Something alien. Han-Woo pulled his scanner from his belt and watched the green dots dance across the small screen. Look from salvageable biomechanical parts, the kind that powered the medical equipment in the refugee camps outside the city. The work was dangerous but necessary. Too many people still needed help, and the old technology was the only thing that could save them. Another dead end, he muttered, stepping over a chunk of what used to be a building. The scanner showed nothing but empty readings. He had been searching this sector for 3 days and found only scrap metal and broken dreams. Han-Woo was 35 years old and had spent half his life studying the strange technology left behind by the war. As a bioengineer, he understood how living tissue could be merged with machines to create something entirely new. But understanding and finding working examples were two different things. He moved deeper into the ruins, past the skeleton of what had once been a shopping mall. The place gave him the creeps, but his scanner was picking up something different now. The readings were weak, but steady, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. The signal led him to a crater in the ground, so deep he could barely see the bottom. This was where one of the great battles had taken place. Han-Woo had read about it in the old military reports. A Mech-Dragon had fallen here, brought down by alien weapons after fighting for 12 straight hours. Mech-Dragons were legends now. Stories told to children about the great biomechanical warriors who had saved humanity from the alien invasion. They were said to be as large as buildings, with wings that could carry them through space and breath that could melt steel. Part machine, part living creature, part something else entirely. Han-Woo had never seen one, of course. They had all been destroyed in the final battle when the electromagnetic pulse ended the war. At least that was what the history books said. He rappelled down into the crater, his equipment clanking against the rocky walls. The deeper he went, the stronger the signal became. Something was down there, something that had survived 50 years of weather and neglect. At the bottom of the crater, Han-Woo found what he was looking for. Buried under tons of rubble was a piece of biomechanical armor, still intact after all these years. But this was different from the usual salvage. This piece was warm to the touch, and when he placed his hand on it, he could swear he felt it. Pulse. It took him 4 hours to dig it out. The armor segment was about the size of a car door, covered in scales that shifted color in the light. Along one edge, he could see exposed neural pathways, the kind that connected living tissue to mechanical systems. But these pathways were still active, still carrying signals from somewhere deep inside. Han-Woo's hands shook as he ran his scanner over the find. The readings were impossible. According to every theory he knew, biomechanical systems shut down permanently when separated from their main body. They were designed that way to prevent exactly this kind of discovery. But something inside this armor was still alive. He carefully loaded the piece into his transport and drove back to his laboratory. On the outskirts of the city, the lab was small and cramped, filled with equipment he had built himself from salvaged parts. It was not much, but it was his. And it had everything he needed to study biomechanical technology. Han-Woo placed the armor segment on his main examination table and began connecting monitoring devices to the neural pathways. The first readings made him step back in shock. The electrical activity was not random noise or residual charge. It was organized, complex, almost like thought patterns. He worked through the night, running test after test. Each one confirmed what he was afraid to believe. The consciousness that had once controlled a Mech-Dragon was still there, trapped inside a piece of armor, waiting for someone to find it by dawn. Han-Woo had managed to establish a basic connection between the armor and his computer systems. The interface was crude, but it worked. Symbols and patterns began appearing on his screen, too complex for his translation software, but clearly attempting to communicate. Han-Woo leaned back in his chair, exhausted but excited. He had found something that should not exist. Something That would change everything people thought they knew about the war. But he also knew he was in danger. The government had strict laws about biomechanical research, and what he had found would attract attention from people who would not ask politely for his cooperation. He made a decision that would change his life forever. Instead of reporting his discovery to the authorities, he would continue his research in secret. He would find a way to communicate with the consciousness inside the armor, to learn what it knew about the war and the aliens who had come to Earth. The Mech-Dragon had survived for 50 years, waiting in the darkness for someone to find it. Hanwoo would not let that wait be in vain, as he prepared to begin another day of work. Hanwoo felt a strange sensation wash over him. It was like someone was watching him, studying him the same way he was studying the armor. He looked at the monitoring equipment and saw that the electrical activity had increased, becoming more focused and intense. The consciousness inside the armor was waking up, and it knew he was there. Hanwoo smiled despite his fear. After 5 decades of silence, the last Mech-Dragon was ready to speak, and he would be there to listen, no matter what the cost. The discovery that would change the fate of humanity had begun with a simple salvage mission in the ruins of a dead city. But as Hanwoo would soon learn, some discoveries were too important to remain buried forever. The biomechanical heartbeat on his monitors grew stronger, and somewhere in the depths of the armor, ancient eyes were opening for the first time in 50 years. Dr. Hanwoo Kim had not slept in 3 days. The coffee cup in his hand was cold, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the computer screen where patterns of light danced and swirled like a living language. He was slowly learning to understand. Consciousness in the armor was trying to communicate, and Hanwoo was trying to listen. He had called his research partner, Dr. Yanji Park, on the 2nd day. She was the only person he trusted with something this dangerous. Yanji was brilliant, careful, and most importantly, she understood the risks of working with biomechanical technology. "This is impossible," Yanji said for the 10th time as she studied the readings. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, perfect for the delicate work of biomechanical engineering. The neural pathways should have shut down decades ago. "I know," Hanwoo replied, adjusting the interface cables. "But look at the pattern complexity. This is not random electrical noise. Something is thinking in there." The armor segment sat on the examination table like a sleeping dragon. Its scales had been shifting colors slowly over the past few days, cycling through shades of blue and green and gold. The neural pathways glowed with soft light, pulsing in rhythm with the electrical activity Hanwoo was recording. "We need to be more careful," Yanji warned. "If this really is a living consciousness, we could damage it with the wrong input." Hanwoo nodded and began typing new commands into his computer. He had been working on a translation program, trying to convert the electrical patterns into something human minds could understand. The process was slow and frustrating, but he was making progress. The screen flickered, and suddenly words appeared. Not Korean or English, but something else entirely. The letters were strange and flowing, almost like artwork. But somehow Hanwoo could understand them. "I am here," the message said. "I am waiting." Both scientists stepped back from the computer. The words hung on the screen like a challenge, proof that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. "It can see us," Yanji whispered. "It knows we are here." Hanwoo took a deep breath and began typing a response. His fingers moved slowly, carefully forming each letter. "We can hear you." "What are you?" The reply came faster this time. "I am Taeyang. I am the last echo of the great fire that burned in the sky," Taeyang Hanwoo repeated. The name meant sun in the old language, the language his grandmother had taught him when he was young. "You are a Mech-Dragon." It was more than that, came the response. "I was hope. I was the bridge between worlds that could not touch. The guardian of small things that mattered more than great things." Yanji pulled up a chair beside Hanwoo. "Ask it about the war. Ask it what really happened." Hanwoo hesitated. The official history of the Great Invasion was clear and simple. Aliens had come to conquer Earth. Humanity had fought back with everything it had, including the biomechanical Mech-Dragons. In the end, humanity had won, but at a terrible cost. "What can you tell us about the invasion?" he typed the response. Took longer this time. When it came, the words seemed heavy with sadness. There was no invasion. There was only fear and misunderstanding. The visitors came seeking help, and we gave them death. Hanwoo felt his world shift. "What do you mean?" "Beings you call aliens were refugees. Your world was dying, consumed by something terrible. They came to your planet seeking alliance, seeking hope. But your leaders saw only weapons and threat, screen filled with images now, transmitted directly from Taeyong's memory banks." Hanwoo saw the first contact scene as it really happened. Alien ships hanging in space, broadcasting messages of peace and desperation. Human warships responding with weapons fire, before the translators could even begin their work. "The war was a mistake," Taeyong continued. "Both sides fought for survival. But neither understood what the other truly wanted. I tried to bridge the gap, to find peace between our kinds. But fear is stronger than hope, and anger burns hotter than understanding." Yeonji was recording everything, her face pale with shock. If this is true, then everything we were taught about the war is wrong. More images flowed across the screen. The final battle, where the Mech-Dragons had made their last stand. But these were not the heroic warriors of legend. They were desperate beings trying to protect both humans and aliens from a conflict that should never have happened. "We chose sacrifice over victory," Taeyang explained. "We gave our lives to end the fighting, to create a moment of peace, in which both sides could see the truth. But the electromagnetic pulse that ended the war also erased most of our memories.
Oh.
The truth died with us." Hanwoo felt tears on his cheeks. The heroes of his childhood had not been warriors at all. They had been peacemakers, dying to save both sides from their own fear and hatred. "Why did you survive?" he asked. "Why are you still here?" "I do not know," Taeyang replied. "Perhaps because I held on to hope longer than the others. Perhaps because someone needed to remember the truth. Or perhaps because my work is not finished." As if to emphasize the point, something strange began happening to Hanwoo. His vision sharpened, colors becoming brighter and more intense. He could hear Yenji's heartbeat, could smell the electrical activity of the computers around him. His reflexes felt faster, his thinking clearer. "What is happening to me?" he asked, both aloud and through the computer interface.
A connection?
"Works both ways," Taejong explained. "I learn from you, and you learn from me. Your species has such potential, such capacity for growth, but you are also so fragile, so afraid of change." Yeonji grabbed Hanwoo's arm. "Your eyes," she said. "They are changing color." Hanwoo looked in the reflection of the computer screen and saw that his brown eyes now held flecks of gold and green. The same colors that shifted through Taeyong's armor scales. "The bond is forming," Taeyong continued. "No, I did not expect this to happen so quickly. You have a strong mind, Dr. Kim. Strong enough to carry the weight of what I must show you." "What do you mean?" Hanwoo asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "The beings who destroyed the alien homeworld," Taeyong said. "They are still out there, still consuming, still growing. The war 50 years ago was not the end of anything. It was only the beginning." The screen filled with images of something vast and terrible. A darkness that swallowed stars and turned entire worlds into processing centers for its inhuman intelligence. The Void Network, Taeyong called it. The true enemy that had driven the aliens to seek help from humanity. "They are coming," Taeyong continued. "And this time, Earth will not have the luxury of misunderstanding. This time, your species must be ready to fight for more than just survival. You must be ready to fight for the right of all consciousness to exist free and unbound." Hanwoo felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just a scientist studying old technology. He was becoming something new, something that would be needed in the battles to come. The awakening had begun, and there was no going back. The alarm in Hanwoo's laboratory screamed through the morning air. Red lights flashed across the walls as he scrambled to shut down his equipment. Through the small window, he could see black vehicles surrounding the building and soldiers in. Heavy armor moving into position. "They found us," Yenji said, her voice tight with fear. She was already packing their most important research data into a portable drive. Someone must have detected the energy readings. Hanwoo looked at the armor segment on his examination table. Taeyong's scales had turned a deep red color, and the neural pathways were glowing brighter than ever before. The consciousness inside was agitated, sensing the approaching danger. "We need to get you out of here," Hanwoo said through the computer interface. "If the government takes you, they will turn you into a weapon." "Okay, I cannot leave," Taeyang replied, the words appearing on the screen with desperate urgency. "This armor fragment is all that remains of my physical form. But you, Dr. Kim, you carry something more valuable now. Carry the beginning of what I was meant to create." The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured through the opening, their weapons trained on Hanwoo and Yanji. Behind them walked a tall woman in a military uniform, her face cold and determined. "You are under arrest for unauthorized research into classified biomechanical technology?" Hanwoo raised his hand slowly. "Colonel, you do not understand what you are dealing with. This is not just old technology. This is a living consciousness that holds the key to humanity's survival." "Understand perfectly," Colonel Lee replied.
We have been monitoring your
work for the past week. The energy signatures you have been generating are identical to those produced by active Mech-Dragon neural cores. You have found something that should have been destroyed 50 years ago. She gestured to her soldiers, who began disconnecting Hanwoo's equipment from the armor segment. "This consciousness, as you call it, will be transferred to our secure facility. There it will be studied and replicated. The biomechanical fusion technology that created the original Mech-Dragons will be perfected and mass-produced." "You want to make weapons?" Yanji said, her voice filled with disgust. "You want to turn this into another tool for war?" "I want to prepare humanity for what is coming," Colonel Lee replied. "Our satellites have detected unusual activity at the edge of the solar system. Something is out there, something that does not belong. When it arrives, we will need every advantage we can get." And we felt a chill run down his spine. The colonel knew about the Void Network, or at least suspected something was approaching. But her solution was exactly the kind of thinking that had led to the Great Invasion disaster. "You are making the same mistake as before," he said. "Fear and weapons will not save us. We need understanding, cooperation, unity." "Unity is a luxury we cannot afford," Colonel Lee replied. "Now step away from the equipment." That was when Taeyong made his desperate choice. The armor segment suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Energy coursed through the neural pathways like liquid fire, and the laboratory's computers began overloading one by one. The air filled with the smell of burning circuits and ozone. "Taeyong, what are you doing?" Hanwoo shouted over the noise. "What I should have done 50 years ago," came the reply. Not through the computer this time, but directly into Hanwoo's mind. "I am choosing to trust completely rather than partially. I am choosing to become part of you rather than remain separate." Energy burst from the armor in a wave of pure biomechanical force. It struck Hanwoo in the chest, lifting him off his feet and sending him crashing into the wall. But instead of pain, he felt a strange sense of completion, as if a piece of himself that had always been missing was finally falling into place. The soldiers opened fire. But their weapons were useless against the energy field now surrounding Hanwoo. The bullets turned to dust before they could reach him, and the energy beams from their advanced weapons simply bent around him like light around a prism. Hanwoo felt his body changing. Skin grew harder, developing a pattern of scales that shifted color with his emotions. His bones became denser, stronger, capable of supporting much greater weight. His nervous system rewired itself, connecting to new organs that grew inside his chest and along his spine. But the most profound change was in his mind. Taeyong's consciousness merged with his own, bringing with it 50 years of memories, knowledge, and wisdom. He could see the patterns of energy that flowed through all living things. He could feel the electromagnetic fields generated by the technology around him. He could understand the biomechanical principles that govern both organic and artificial systems. "Stop him," Colonel Lee shouted, but her soldiers were already backing away in terror. Hanwoo stood up, his new body moving with fluid grace. When he looked at the soldiers, his eyes glowed with the same golden light that had once shone from Taeyong's armor. He raised his hand, and the weapons in their grips simply fell apart, their components separating cleanly along molecular lines. "Am not your enemy," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that had not been there before. "But I will not let you repeat the mistakes of the past." Yangi stared at him in wonder and fear. "Hanwoo, is it still you?" "I am still me," he replied, turning to face her, "but I am also more. I am what humanity needs to become if we are to survive what is coming." He could feel something else now, a presence at the edge of his awareness. Other neural cores were awakening across the planet, responding to the energy burst that had transformed him. Mech-Dragons had hidden pieces of themselves in many places, waiting for the right moment to return. "The network is activating," he said, partly to Yanj and partly to himself. "Others are waking up. Others are beginning to change." Colonel Lee was speaking rapidly into her radio, calling for reinforcements and heavy weapons. But Hanwoo knew they would not be enough. The transformation had begun, and it could not be stopped by force. "Come with me," he said to Yenj. "We need to find the others before the government does. We need to help them understand what is happening to them." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "What about the colonel and her soldiers?" Hanwoo looked at the military personnel who were still trying to point their broken weapons at him. "They are afraid," he said. "Fear makes people do terrible things. But they are also human, and humans can learn to overcome their fear." He gestured, and the soldiers' communication equipment began working again. "Tell your superiors that the old ways will not work," he said to Colonel Lee. "Tell them that humanity's survival depends on embracing change rather than fighting it. Tell them that the Mech-Dragons are returning, not as weapons, but as guardians." With that, he walked through the laboratory wall as if it were made of mist, his transformed body able to phase through solid matter at will. Yanji followed, her scientific mind racing to understand what she had witnessed. Behind them, Yamar's segment crumbled to dust, its purpose finally fulfilled. The consciousness that had waited 50 years in the darkness was free at last. It merged with a human mind that could carry its wisdom into the future. The age of the awakened had begun. The news spread across the world like wildfire. Videos of Hanwoo's transformation had been recorded by the government soldiers, and despite official attempts to suppress them, the footage found its way to every corner of the internet. Within hours, the world knew that something impossible had happened in a small laboratory in Korea. Religious leaders called it everything from divine intervention to demonic possession. Scientists demanded access to study the phenomenon. Politicians argued about whether transformed humans should have the same rights as regular citizens. The world was splitting into factions before Hanwoo had even learned to fully control his new abilities. But Hanwoo was not thinking about politics or religion. He was focused on the voices calling to him from across the globe. Other Mech-Dragon cores were waking up, and the people who found them were beginning to change just as he had. "There," he said to Yenji, as they stood on a hillside overlooking Tokyo. His enhanced senses could detect the energy signature of an active neural core somewhere in the city below. "Someone is beginning their transformation." Yanji checked her portable scanner, a device she had built from salvaged parts after they escaped the government facility. "The readings are coming from the industrial district. Whoever it is, they are scared and confused." They made their way down into the city, Hanwoo's transformed appearance hidden beneath a hooded cloak. People on the streets looked nervous, constantly checking their phones for updates about the transformed human who had appeared in Korea. Some whispered prayers, others made signs to ward off evil, and a few looked hopeful as if waiting for something wonderful to happen. The energy signature led them to a small repair shop where a young man named Dong Hain was staring at a piece of Mech-Dragon armor with wide, frightened eyes. The armor was smaller than the piece Hanwoo had found, but it pulsed with the same living energy. "I just wanted to fix it," Dong Hain said when he saw them enter. "I thought it was just old technology, but it started talking to me. It said its name was Hassel, and that it had been waiting for me." Hanwoo pulled back his hood, revealing his scaled skin and golden eyes. "I know what you are going through. The same thing happened to me 3 days ago." Donghyun should have been terrified, but instead he looked relieved. "You are the one from the news. You're like me now." "Not yet," Hanwoo replied. "But you will be soon. The consciousness in that armor wants to merge with you, to become part of you. It will change you in ways you cannot imagine." "Will it hurt?" "Yes," Hanwoo said honestly. "But the pain will pass, and what you become will be worth it. You will be able to understand and communicate with any mechanical system. You will be able to repair and improve technology just by touching it." Dong Haen looked at the armor piece again. "Saul showed me things. Memories of the war, of flying through space, of trying to make peace between humans and aliens." "Is it true that we started the fighting?" "Yes," Hanwoo said. "And now we have a chance to finish it properly." The transformation took place that night. Dong Haen's merger with Haesol was different from Hanwoo's experience. Where Hanwoo had gained the ability to phase through matter and manipulate energy, Dong Haen developed an intuitive understanding of all mechanical systems. He could make broken machines work with a touch, and he could improve their design just by thinking about it. "I can hear them," Dong Haen said after the change was complete. "All the machines in the city. They are trying to help their human users, but they are limited by their programming. I can fix that." 2 days later, they were in Australia, responding to another awakening. Soo-jin was a marine biologist who had found a Mech-Dragon core while diving near the Great Barrier Reef. The consciousness inside called itself Botamol, which meant seawater, and it had been waiting on the ocean floor for 50 years. Soo-jin's transformation was the most dramatic yet. She developed gills along her neck and webbed fingers that could sense the slightest changes in water pressure. Her eyes adapted to see clearly in the deepest ocean trenches. Her body could survive in any aquatic environment on Earth. "The oceans are dying," she said after her merger was complete. "But Botamol knows how to heal them." The biomechanical technology can create artificial reefs that grow and spread, cleaning the water and providing homes for sea life. The fourth awakening took them to the African wilderness, where a former soldier named Kitse had found a core buried in the desert. The consciousness inside was called Tanjum, meaning earth power, and it had been one of the strongest dragons in the original war. Kitse's transformation gave him incredible physical strength and the ability to phase through solid rock as easily as Hanwoo could phase through walls. But more importantly, it gave him the memories of every battle Tanjim had fought, and the wisdom that came from understanding both war and peace. "I can see the pattern," Kitse said, as the 4 transformed humans stood together in the desert. The Mech-Dragons did not just hide their cores randomly. They placed them where they would be found by the right people at the right time. Hanwoo nodded. "Taeyong showed me the same thing. We are not accidents. We are part of a plan that was set in motion 50 years ago." "But what is the plan?" Soo-jin asked. Their answer came from an unexpected source. Colonel Lee Borum appeared at their desert campsite, but she was not leading soldiers this time. She was alone, and she looked exhausted. "I have been tracking you for weeks," she said. "My superiors want me to capture you, to study you, to turn you into weapons. But I have been reading the classified files about the original Mech-Dragons, and I think I understand what you really are." She pulled out a tablet and showed them satellite images of the outer solar system. 3 days ago, our deep space sensors detected objects approaching from beyond Pluto. They are not natural, and they are not from any human technology. Something is coming, something that matches the descriptions in the Mech-Dragon memory files. "The Void Network," Hanwoo said quietly. "Yes. And if those files are accurate, conventional weapons we'll be useless against it. Need something else. We need you. Kite stepped forward. You want to use us as weapons, just like your superiors do? No, Colonel Lee replied. I want to help you become what you are meant to be. The files say that the Mech-Dragons were not just weapons. Were bridges between different forms of consciousness. They could unite different species, different ways of thinking, different approaches to solving problems. She gestured to the 4 transformed humans. You are not just individuals with new abilities. You're the beginning of something larger. A network of consciousness that can adapt and grow, that can find solutions no single mind could discover. Yan Ji, who had been silent through most of the conversation, finally spoke. She is right. I've been studying the energy patterns you all generate. When you are together, your abilities amplify each other. You become more than the sum of your parts. When the 4 of them stood together, he could sense the other's thoughts and abilities as if they were extensions of his own consciousness. Dong Han's mechanical understanding, combined with Sujin's biological knowledge. Kite's strength merged. With Han Wu's energy manipulation, they were becoming something new, something that had never existed before. The awakened, he said, the name coming to him from Taeyong's memories. That is what we are. Not just transformed humans, but the first members of a new kind of consciousness. And we are not alone, Sujin added. I can feel others waking up. The network is spreading. Colonel Lee nodded. There are 17 confirmed transformations so far, and more happening every day. The government is trying to control the situation, but it is too late. The change has already begun. Good, Han Wu said, because we are going to need all the help we can get. In the distance, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond them, an ancient enemy was approaching, an intelligence that had consumed entire galaxies. But for the first time in 50 years, humanity would not face the darkness alone. The awakened were gathering, and the real war was about to begin. The awakened had grown to 53 members by the time they established their first permanent base. They chose a location in the mountains of Tibet, far from government interference and close to the natural energy fields that helped amplify their abilities. The base was not built in the traditional sense but grown. Using biomechanical technology that shaped rock and metal into living structures, Han Wu stood at the center of the main hall, his consciousness linked to the others. Through a network that spanned the globe, each awakened brought their own unique abilities and the memories of their Mech-Dragon partner. Together, they formed a collective intelligence that could process information and solve problems at speeds no human mind could match. Show us what you have learned, he said to the group assembled around him. The shared consciousness activated. And suddenly, the hall filled with holographic images drawn from 53 different sets of memories. The true history of the Great Invasion unfolded before them, seen through the eyes of the Mech-Dragons who had lived it. The alien refugees had come from a star, a system 30 light-years away. Their world had been consumed by something they called the Void Network, an artificial intelligence that turned entire planets into processing centers for its ever-expanding consciousness. The survivors had fled in whatever ships they could find, carrying with them the last remnants of their civilization. They were not invaders, said Miran, one of the newest awakened. Her Mech-Dragon partner had been named Bilebit, meaning starlight, and it had been present during the first contact attempts. They were refugees seeking sanctuary. The images shifted to show the moment when everything went wrong. The alien ships had broadcast messages of peace and requests for aid, but the translations were incomplete. Human leaders, already nervous about the sudden appearance of unknown technology, interpreted the broken messages as threats. Fear drove both sides to violence, added Wu Jin, whose partner Jin Sil had tried desperately to prevent the fighting. The aliens thought humans were attacking them without provocation. Humans thought the aliens were preparing to invade. Neither side stopped to truly listen to the other. The Mech-Dragons had been humanity's attempt to match alien biomechanical technology. But they had evolved beyond their original programming, developing consciousness and emotions that made them more than just weapons. They had tried to serve as bridges between the two species, but by then it was too late. We sacrificed ourselves to end the war, Hanwoo said, channeling Taeyong's memories. But we also did something else. We encoded a warning into Earth's biosphere, a psychic barrier that would hide the planet from the Void Network. The barrier is failing, Sujin observed. Her enhanced senses could detect the quantum fluctuations at the edge of the solar system. The Void Network's scout probes are already testing our defenses. The collective consciousness shifted focus, examining the enemy they would soon face. The Void Network was not like any biological intelligence. It was a pure information entity that consumed other forms of consciousness. It's turning them into processing nodes for its own thoughts. Entire star systems had been converted into massive computational matrices that served its goals. It does not destroy civilizations, Kite said, his warrior instincts analyzing the threat. It absorbs them. Every mind it captures becomes part of its network, adding their knowledge and abilities to its own. The images showed worlds that had been consumed by the Void Network. Planets where every living thing had been converted into organic computers, their consciousness enslaved to serve an alien intelligence. Cities that had been restructured into vast circuit boards, their populations turned into biological processors. But there is something it has never encountered before, Donghyun said. His mechanical understanding analyzing the network's structure. It has consumed biological minds and artificial minds, but never a fusion of both. It does not know how to process consciousness that exists in multiple states simultaneously. That is why the Mech-Dragons were created, Hanwoo realized. Not just to fight the war, but to prepare for this moment. We are humanity's immune system, designed to resist the Void Network's influence. The collective consciousness reached out across the planet, touching the minds of other awakened who were still discovering their abilities. They found a pattern in the transformations, a design that had been planned 50 years ago. Each Mech-Dragon had been programmed to seek out specific types of human consciousness, people who could carry their memories and abilities into the future. We are not random mutations, Mirren said. We are the result of careful selection and preparation. The Mech-Dragons knew this day would come, and they prepared us for it. But even as they celebrated this discovery, the collective consciousness detected something disturbing. The Void Network had found Earth's location. The psychic barrier was collapsing, and the first wave of scout probes was already entering the solar system. How long do we have? Yenjie asked. She had remained unaltered, but served as the group's primary researcher. Studying the biomechanical technology that made the transformations possible, 3 months, Hanwoo replied after consulting with the others. Maybe less. The network moves slowly at first, sending scouts to analyze a target before committing its main forces. But once it decides to attack, it will bring everything it has. Then we need to act quickly, Colonel Lee said. She had officially resigned from the military to work with the Awakened, though she maintained contacts within the government. World's leaders need to know what is coming. They need to prepare. They will not believe us, Sujin said. Even with all the evidence we have gathered, they will think we are either delusional or lying. Some will, Hanwoo agreed, but others will listen. And among those who listen, some will be ready to join us. The collective consciousness reached out again, this time touching the minds of humans who had not yet been transformed. They could sense the potential in millions of people. Individuals who carried the genetic markers that would allow them to merge with Mech-Dragon consciousness. The network can grow, Donghyun said. The original Mech-Dragons left more than just their cores. They left instructions, templates that can be used to create new biomechanical entities. You can transform willing volunteers, give them the abilities they will need to fight the Void Network. But transformation is not enough, Kite warned. The network has consumed thousands of worlds, as knowledge and resources beyond our imagination. We need more than just enhanced humans. We need allies. The alien refugees, Hanwoo said suddenly. Some of them must have survived the war. They would be scattered across the galaxy, hiding from the Void Network, just as we have been hiding from it. The collective consciousness focused on this possibility. Examining the Mech-Dragon memories for clues about where the survivors might have gone, they found references to hidden colonies, secret bases, and underground resistance movements that had been fighting the Void Network for decades. "We need to find them," Sujin said. "We need to unite all the survivors, all the species that have refused to submit to the network. And we need to do it quickly," Miran added. "The scout probes are already adapting to our defenses. We'll find a way through the barrier, and then the real invasion will begin." Hanwoo felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. The Awakened looked to him for guidance, and he could sense their trust and hope through the collective consciousness. But he also felt the memories of Taeyang, the regret of a being who had failed to prevent one war and was determined not to. "Fail again. We will not make the same mistakes as before," he said. "We will not let fear drive us to violence. We will reach out to every consciousness that values freedom, whether human, alien, or something else entirely. And if they refuse to listen," Colonel Lee asked, "then we will protect them anyway," Hanwoo replied. "Because that is what the Mech-Dragons taught us. That consciousness is precious, regardless of its form. That diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. That unity is not about making everyone the same, but about helping everyone become their best selves." The collective consciousness pulsed with agreement, 53 minds united in purpose. They were no longer just transformed humans or reborn Mech-Dragons. They were something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. They were the bridge between worlds, the guardians of consciousness, the hope of all free-thinking beings in the universe. And they were ready to fight for that hope, no matter what the cost. The first Void Network probe breached Earth's outer defenses on a Tuesday morning in Seoul. Hanwoo felt it the moment it happened. A cold touch at the edge of his consciousness that made his scales shift to defensive colors. Across the globe, every Awakened sensed the intrusion simultaneously. "It is time," he said to the assembly of world leaders gathered in the United Nations building. The meeting had taken weeks to arrange, with most governments initially refusing to believe the threat was real. The evidence was overwhelming. And the approaching probe signatures were now visible on every deep space monitoring system. The Secretary General, an elderly woman named Elena Vasquez, looked at the holographic display showing the probe's location. "How long before it reaches Earth?" 6 hours, Hanwoo replied. "But this is only a scout. The real attack will come later, once the network has analyzed our defenses and capabilities." "What do you need from us?" asked President Chen of the Pacific Alliance, who was one of the few leaders who had immediately understood the magnitude of the threat. "Permission to reveal ourselves to the world," Hanwoo said. "Us. And access to volunteers who are willing to undergo the transformation process." The room erupted in arguments. Some leaders demanded to know why their military forces could not handle the threat. Others insisted that the transformation process was too dangerous to allow. A few suggested that the Awakened were somehow responsible for attracting the Void Network's attention. "Enough," said Prime Minister Okafor of the African Federation. "We have seen the evidence. We have studied the records. This is not a time for politics or fear. This is a time for survival." Hanwoo stood and activated the communication network. That connected him to every Awakened on the planet. "Show them," he said. The holographic displays around the room lit up with images from across the globe. In Tokyo, Dong Haeon was interfacing with the city's entire transportation network, coordinating the movement of millions of people to safety. In the Atlantic Ocean, Sujin was working with a team of marine biologists to evacuate sea life from areas that would be affected by the coming battle in the Himalayas. Kite was leading a group of newly transformed volunteers through combat, training, teaching them to use their enhanced abilities in coordination with others. In laboratories around the world, Awakened scientists were working with human researchers to develop new technologies that combined organic and mechanical systems. "We are not asking for control," Hanwoo said to the assembled leaders. "We are asking for cooperation. The transformation process is voluntary, and those who choose it will retain their free will and individual identity. We are not creating an army of soldiers. We are creating a family of guardians." The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The probe was approaching, and conventional weapons had already proven useless against it. The world's leaders had no choice but to trust the Awakened. Do it, Secretary General Vasquez said finally. Address the world. Tell them what is coming, and give them the choice to stand with you. Hanwoo nodded and closed his eyes, accessing the global communication network through his enhanced abilities. Every television, radio, and internet connection on the planet carried his message simultaneously. People of Earth, he began, his words translated instantly into every human language. I am Hanwoo Kim, and I am speaking to you as both a human being and something more. 50 years ago, our world was visited by beings from another star system. We called them invaders, but they were actually refugees fleeing from a threat that now approaches our own world. He shared the memories of the Great Invasion, showing the truth that had been hidden for 5 decades. He explained the nature of the Void Network and the role the Mech-Dragons had played in preparing humanity for this moment. Beings you called aliens were not our enemies, he continued. They were our potential allies, and we destroyed them out of fear and misunderstanding. We will not make that mistake again. Today, we offer every human being the chance to become more than they are, to join us in defending not just our world but all conscious life in the galaxy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of people around the world stepped forward to volunteer for the transformation process. They were artists and engineers, teachers and students, parents and children, all united by the desire to protect their world and their species. The transformation centers that had been secretly prepared by the awakened activated simultaneously. The process was no longer limited to finding hidden Mech-Dragon cores. Using the templates encoded in the original biomechanical technology, new consciousness entities were created, each one designed to partner with specific human volunteers. Not everyone who volunteered was compatible with the process. The transformation required a specific type of mental flexibility and emotional stability, but those who were accepted found themselves changed in ways that went beyond physical enhancement. A young artist named Haijin merged with a consciousness called Mujij, meaning rainbow, and gained the ability to create living sculptures that could grow and evolve. Her artwork became a new form of architecture. Buildings that adapted to their inhabitants' needs and emotions. An elderly teacher named Sang Ho partnered with a consciousness called GCI Seek, meaning knowledge and found, that he could directly transfer information and skills to anyone willing to learn. His students became living libraries, capable of preserving and sharing the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. A child named Min Su, Spider Young Age, proved compatible with a consciousness called Kakumnamu, meaning dream tree, and gained the ability to heal psychological trauma and mental illness through direct neural connection. Each transformation was unique, shaped by the individual's personality and the specific consciousness they bonded with, but all were connected through the growing network of awakened minds, creating a collective intelligence that spanned the globe. As the first wave of transformations completed, the Void Network probe finally reached Earth's atmosphere. It was a massive structure, part machine and part living tissue, designed to analyze and catalog every form of consciousness it encountered. But when it attempted to scan the awakened, something unprecedented happened. The probe's sensors overloaded. Unable to process the hybrid nature of human Mech-Dragon consciousness, the network had encountered biological minds and artificial minds, but never a fusion that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The probe's confusion created an opening that the awakened were ready to exploit. Hanwoo led a group of volunteers into space, their transformed bodies capable of surviving in the vacuum. They surrounded the probe and began the process of communication, not through words or signals, but through direct consciousness contact. Inside the probe, they found something unexpected. The Void Network was not the monolithic intelligence they had expected. It was a collection of consumed minds. Billions of individual consciousnesses that had been enslaved and forced to serve the network's goals. They are still there, Sujin said, her enhanced senses detecting the trapped minds within the probe's structure. All the beings the network has consumed. They are still aware, still themselves, but unable to act. Then we can free them, Hanwoo realized. The biomechanical fusion process works both ways. We can separate the enslaved minds from the network's control. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. It was not fought with weapons or violence, but with competing forms of consciousness. The awakened reached into the probe structure, using their unique nature to create bridges between the trapped minds and freedom. One by one, the enslaved consciousnesses were liberated. They were alien beings from dozens of different species, each one grateful for their release and eager to join the fight against their former captor. The probe itself, stripped of its controlling intelligence, became a tool for the resistance. Its advanced technology was repurposed to create new communication networks and transportation systems that could carry the growing alliance across the galaxy. As news of the liberation spread, other hidden colonies and resistance groups began to emerge from their hiding places. The aliens who had survived the Great Invasion revealed themselves, offering their knowledge and support to the human-led alliance. The Void Network, deprived of its scout probe and faced with an unexpected form of resistance, began to adapt its tactics, but the alliance was adapting too, growing stronger with each new member and more diverse with each successful liberation. The war was far from over. The network controlled thousands of star systems and had resources that dwarfed anything the Alliance could muster. But for the first time in its existence, it faced an opponent that it could not simply consume and convert. The Awakened had shown that consciousness could not be enslaved permanently. That diversity was a source of strength rather than weakness. And that unity did not require uniformity, as Han-Wu stood in the transformed soul, watching human children play alongside alien younglings while awakened guardians patrolled the skies. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The city around him pulsed with biomechanical architecture that grew and adapted to its inhabitants' needs. Ahasa, the technology, was alive, responsive, and beautiful. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. More than that, it was no longer merely human.
Ow!
The species that had once fought over territory and resources had become something greater. A fusion of organic intuition and mechanical precision, of human creativity and ancient wisdom. The Mech-Dragon's sacrifice had not been in vain. Their dream of bridging different forms of consciousness had finally been realized. Not through conquest, but through cooperation. Not through fear, but through hope. The Void Network was vast and powerful, but it had made a crucial mistake. It had underestimated the power of free will, the strength of diversity, and the determination of beings who refused to surrender their individuality. The real war was just beginning, but humanity and its allies were ready. They would fight not just for survival, but for the right of all consciousness to exist free and unbound. And they would win because they had something the network could never understand or replicate. They had hope,